Why is Bayer Corporation the rat of the week?
Internal documents show that after this company positively, absolutely knew that they had a medication that was infected with the AIDS virus, they took the product off the market in the U.S. and then they dumped it in France, Europe, Asia, and Latin America. The medicine's called Factor 8. It was an injection medicine that was used for hemophiliacs, mostly children. Children had been born with an incurable disease.
Hold on, Mike.
Yeah, hold on, Mike. Let me give some context. Back in the late 1970s and early 1980s, there was an unidentified infectious disease associated with immune system collapse. The first case of this was identified in 1981 by the CDC, initially referred to as GRID, which would later become officially recognized as AIDS, or Acquired Immunodeficiency Syndrome, in 1982. On July 16, 1982, the CDC reported 3 hemophiliacs had acquired AIDS. And around this time, epidemiologists started to believe that AIDS was being spread through blood products. One of the internal documents mentioned by our friend Mike came out from the manager of plasma procurement for Bayer's in a letter that is quoted, "There is strong evidence to suggest that AIDS is passed on to other people through plasma products." And that was in January 1983. 2 months later, in March, the CDC warned that blood products appear responsible for AIDS among hemophilia patients. Just another 2 months later, in May of '83, rival companies were already making heat-treated versions of the medicine because government studies had shown the heat treatment made AIDS inactive in the medicine.
So hold on. So you're telling me that Bayer knew that this drug was infected with the AIDS virus, they yanked it from the market in America, and then they dumped it in markets overseas?
In France, an estimated 4,000 people were given blood infected with HIV due to the continued use of the untreated medicine through August 1983. On February 29, 1984, Bayer finally became the last of the 4 major blood product companies to get approval in the US to sell the heated medicine, although they kept making the unheated medicine up until August 1984. The reason given for still making the unheated medicine was that it would be cheaper to produce due to being bound by several fixed price contracts. The internal documents being referred to throughout the video are records obtained from the American Hemophiliacs lawsuit. And according to those documents, in late 1984, when a Hong Kong distributor asked Bayer about the newer heated product, records show that Bayer requested the distributor to use up stocks of the old medicine before switching to its safer, better product. Months after this exchange, hemophiliacs in Hong Kong began testing positive for HIV, leading local doctors to question whether Bayer was dumping AIDS-tainted medicine into less developed countries. Bayer denied these allegations, stating the unheated product had no severe hazard and was the same fine product we have supplied for years. Even more damning evidence is when, in May of 1985, Hong Kong was heading towards a medical emergency. Hong Kong asked Bayer for the newer product, and Bayer replied that the majority is going to the US and Europe, and there wasn't enough for Hong Kong outside of the most vocal patients. But why would Bayer, knowing all the science, continue to sell medicine that had a real risk of killing its patients? Well, Mike gives it to us pretty straight.
Profit on a product that they could not sell in America. So they made a huge profit. They dropped the product in Japan, Spain, and France. By the way, Joe, government officials in France that allowed that to happen actually had to go to prison for it. In America, not one corporate executive for this company has been indicted or even criminally investigated by our Justice Department.
Why not? You're telling me that these people that dumped this AIDS-tainted blood in foreign countries, who killed children, have not been taken to task in the United States?
It's worse than that. The U.S. government allowed it to happen. The FDA allowed this to happen. And now the government is completely looking the other way. Thousands of innocent hemophiliacs have died from the AIDS virus. And not only they're dying, their family members are dying because they're becoming infected with the disease. This company knew absolutely that they had a problem with the product. They knew that it was infected with AIDS. They dumped it because they wanted to turn this disaster into a profit.
Mike, I want to read to you what Bayer told the New York Times about this scandal. They said Bayer behaved responsibly, ethically, and humanely decisions made nearly 2 decades ago were based on the best scientific information of the time and were consistent with the regulations in place. That sounds like a lot of legal mumbo-jumbo. Now, you say you have internal documents that show that they knew that this drug they were dumping was tainted with the AIDS drug? Or the AIDS virus?
The documents show that there was no question that this company absolutely understood the risk, that they knew that it was contaminated. It wasn't a possibility. They knew it was contaminated. Americans were dying from the product before it was pulled off the market. The only reason it was pulled off the market is because lawyers found the documents and showed it to the government, and finally the government said, you can't sell it here, but then the government allowed them to dump it in Spain, France, and Japan.
That's amazing. That's just amazing.
Well,
I want to read to you what the New York Times said, and this is an investigation that they also did, and they said the federal government was part of the problem while the Food and Drug Administration told the company not to ship the drugs overseas. The man responsible for the drug supply, quote, asked that the issue be quietly solved without alerting the Congress, the medical community, and the public.
In May 1985, the FDA's regulator of blood products, Harry M. Mayer Jr., called together the officials of the 4 major Factor VIII companies and ordered them to comply with their voluntary agreement to withdraw non-heated products from the market. France's former health minister, Edmund Herve, has been convicted for his role in the contamination of 2 people who were given HIV-tainted blood. This is the only person that was held criminally responsible for the thousands of cases. Mike said that the official went to prison, but I didn't find any evidence to support that. As for old Edmund, the court didn't even hand down a punishment. The judge said that due to the length of the scandal, the former health minister had not benefited from the presumption of innocence to which he was entitled. Sources are in the description. If you made it this far, drop a like. Thank you for your time.